Tobias Richter, founder, TRI Dental Implants. And I already told you, you're so used to pitching.
Yes.
You can do that way better than I do. So can you give us kind of a 30-second, 1 minute max
Absolutely.
insight of what you do and how did you get there?
Okay, absolutely. So I started as an entrepreneur in 2007, starting my first venture, which we sold 3 years later to an American company. It was all in the field of dental implantology. So in 2011 we started TRI, which is innovative provider of dental implant solutions from Switzerland. We produce in Switzerland, we develop implants here, and we export it into 50 markets. But I'm also co-founder of a dental clinic group and shareholder and a board member of Germany's biggest lab group, dental lab group.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also involved in an e-learning company that is providing dental solutions for dentists. And long story short, we make people smile. So it's all about smiles and dental. And it's a really good industry because when you have pain with your teeth, you definitely go to the doctor. When you have pain in your foot, you maybe wait for weeks.
Yeah.
And it's also a very consistent business with good margins. And that's where I'm in, exactly.
You worked at Straumann, which is one of the market leaders before,
yes,
a Swiss company. How did they react to kind of the new guy in the field?
Yeah, I think Straumann is an amazing company, and I'm very grateful for my time there. But the relations here, especially, I think that's a great aspect of Switzerland, are maintained fantastic between each other. We are still not on a $1 billion revenue like Straumann, and so we have, I think, we respect each other, but we tease them a little bit.
Okay.
But the relations are really good, no worries.
Having said that, Switzerland can be quite small, market-wise, but also ecosystem-wise. You call it a strength, but do you struggle with that sometimes, coming from, from well, first of all, a bigger country, but also from you've worked with the US a lot, so those are different cultures, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But the Switzerland, the ecosystem that we have here in dental and medtech specifically is, I think, unique. I mean, to go by train to Bern, to Geneva, to Basel and Zurich, all of them have hubs for universities, for laboratories, for production sites, greatly educated staff. I would argue to start what I did would be much more difficult in other country spaces due to the distances. Here everything is remote, proximate, very intense and high quality. So I really believe that it's a fantastic place to start a company. Yeah. Also to start a company is much easier than in other countries. And then to have something like this, the startup days, the ecosystem here to help entrepreneurs get started is absolutely unique. I was actually talking here to Thomas Müller yesterday. I was asking how is the health of young startups in Switzerland? How can we compare it to other countries? And he has invested last year to 60 different companies. And he says it's an absolutely A-class, unique situation that we have in Switzerland in terms of spin-offs that come out of the universities, entrepreneurs that get started. Mm-hmm. I think it's the best place to get started. And we all are used to think global, I think. You know? So
we have to,
and I think right when I started the company, we said, let's go global. Mm-hmm. One of our biggest markets is the United States right now. Switzerland itself is actually a relatively small market for us.
But since you were talking about investment, we just heard from Tobias Kunzenhauser that it has become more difficult in the last 2 or 3 years, more challenging. Do you make the same experience that it was easier to get finance and funding?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously everybody is looking much more now on the bottom line than on the top line. But I think if you have a unique team, first of all, the team, and also a unique value proposition, you still find the right partners. Yeah. But it definitely has become more difficult than it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. Yes. I guess in that regard, something that is helpful is if you have a kind of a future-minded company or a future-minded idea, you're very heavily relying on digitization. Yes. They once called you the Apple of the dental industry.
You read the article. You did your homework.
But it is an industry that has been quite old school for a long time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
How much of an opportunity is that? But how much does it hinder you as well when dealing with people who might be a bit old school?
I think it's a fantastic question, and I always say, like 20 years ago, when I visited the global trade fair of dental, it's the most boring place you could go to. Now you have AI, you have scanners, you have printers, you have CAD/CAM, you have guided surgery, you have augmented reality for the surgeries. I think it has become the most exciting place to be in. And yes, this is actually our strength, that we understand this digitalization better, and that we are maybe more agile than a strawman to connect the dots and integrate the latest technologies to provide dentists with the most digital workflow that they can, and that you as a patient come into the clinic, you get the scan, we place the implant after your snowboard accident, and you go home with a tooth right after 1 hour.
Those
no waiting anymore.
Are made 3D,
3D
printer,
3D printed.
Just that we can imagine.
So you, in 1 hour you can actually now get a new implant and a tooth. And that's possible based on digital technology, the precision coming along, and also the cost reduction that we provide. So, and that's where we're strong. That's where we're really leading.
I mean, you're changing a whole industry. How do you ever get a bad conscience about people left behind, like the ones who are not really into the digital space?
No, I believe in Schumpeter. Creative destruction, I call it. What is being destroyed is also, there's always a side where new jobs are created, new opportunities arise, and I really believe in that new technologies create new opportunities. You just have to obviously go with the times and stay up to beat, and there will be people losing out if you don't adapt fast enough to the environment. So, but I'm not concerned. People are forced today to change. We talked about politics just now, right? I mean, the speed that is happening is enormous. But in business,
it's not going to stop. I think that's something we have to.
No. And also, we don't do it because we maybe are outcompeting a competitor. We do it to really bring better solutions to the patient, right? Reduce time for treatment, reduce cost, and enhance the clinical result. And that's what I tell my employees every morning when you wake up. Think about the implants that we place today in patients, which enable them to kiss their wife again, to smile with their friends again. Because that's really, when you have a problem with a tooth, you hide it. It's a big social issue. So make people, we do stuff to really enhance the patient's environment. And then the result that some people fall behind or that somebody loses on the other side is for me secondary.
That goes into a topic where you once said in an interview, it's all about purpose, your purpose as well. You obviously found your purpose, but could you imagine yourself doing a business without that kind of intrinsic need to fulfill that purpose?
I come from a medical family. My father was a doctor.
He's a doctor, right?
So I grew up, and my father was discussing amputated feet at the table.
Oh, nice.
And all this kind of stuff. So I got used to it. But I really learned that we always got all these presents at home. The patients brought bottles of wine and beer and cakes. And I thought, why do they do this? And I saw the gratefulness that is created when you really help people. And so medicine was always for me the place I wanted to go. And I'm very happy that I can actually work in this industry. That technology comes in now, makes it even more exciting, right? To use all digital technology to actually enhance patient experiences is something that's important. And yes, so I think purpose is very important. And I think that's the advice for anyone who starts a company. If you have a purpose and you love what you do, you will get through big challenges too. Because when I started the company 2 years after the start, we had significant financial problems. Significant financial problems, almost to the risk of insolvency. But if you have then the determination and the North Star of your purpose, I think it helps you a lot. Otherwise, it becomes difficult.
I think it's an important point and something that is maybe not talked about enough. That in the startup ecosystem, maybe you always have to convey positivity, and you always have to say everything's fine, and no, I'm not struggling. How can we implement that more in the whole kind of structure that you are allowed to talk about failure, you are allowed to talk about dark times or struggles?
I think I notice in the entrepreneurial environment, like here, and also the entrepreneurs organizations which exist, it's a common aspect that you talk about failure. Exactly. You only mainly talk about failure. In public, it's a sad that we here in Europe, I know everybody talks about it. We sometimes, when you fail, you maybe have people are looked down on you.
Almost
whereas
stigma,
in the US,
right?
we say go for the next. But it's changing. It's changing. I think as now workplaces become more dynamic, as you're not anymore start a job and stay 40 years there. It's changing. But I also believe talking about failures is the biggest learning experience you can have, and in the environment where I am, it's very natural and happening. Yeah.
We always have investors here as well. Can you be honest towards an investor as well? Can you show weakness? Can you show maybe uncertainty as well?
I think if you don't do it, then it has very short legs because it will catch up to you. So yes, sometimes you're tempted to say you hide, cover up, but to confront openly what the challenges are and the problems are helps you also mentally, psychologically wise. Because if you share, if you have I think whenever you have stress, why do you have stress? You have stress about something because you just maybe have tackled the question right now, or the email is lying there, you're not doing it. But as soon as you write an email to someone or call someone about the topic, the stress dilutes a little bit more. So sharing about your challenges, sharing about your failures, sharing about the problems you have, I think is the best thing you can do because it helps you in your way to tackle the problem faster. So never eat it up and cover it up because it bears also on your own psychology and leads you to maybe the wrong decision making.
Of course, stress is often linked to the workload, and being a serial entrepreneur, I can imagine you don't work 40 hours a week. And we just heard in the first talk that it can be challenging to find the right balance between where does my job end, where does my private life begin, how do I differentiate these two, and how do I kind of maybe distance myself sometimes. Do you struggle with that as well?
So maybe talk about the topic that my wife is also an entrepreneur.
Exactly,
I have 3 kids. So I'm a very strict rule on the weekend actually, where I at 8 o'clock Friday evening I switch off my emails.
Oh, okay.
And I stop until Sunday 4 or 5, 6 p.m. Otherwise I get, as you say, there comes this little email and there's a mental explosion because you think about these things. So I need that as a hygiene. It probably creeps in, right? So for the weekend I'm very strict. So I'm really 100% with my kids and my family. Otherwise, during the week it's a constant. It's part of your. And obviously, the weekend you also think about it. But as an entrepreneur, I think you always constantly are. It's embedded, right? Yeah. And as my wife is also an entrepreneur, we talk a lot about our businesses, but that's actually healthy because it gives you a different viewpoint, a personal viewpoint of how you maybe take decisions, how you talk with your employees, how you talk with some of your partners. You can't. As an entrepreneur, I think you can't eliminate it from your private life.
But it is an interesting, constellation. Your wife being a very successful startup entrepreneur as well. Then you have 3 kids. How do you juggle all these balls?
Yeah, so first of all, before I say anything, it's not easy. And there's no magic stick that solves it. But we have implemented a lot of routines and rules and structures that we sort of manage this. I have to admit, we also have an au pair who helps us. But for example, with the kids, every Sunday at 5 p.m. we have a forum meeting.
Okay.
So for 30 minutes we sit together and we talk about the week and we talk about how do you feel, what was great last week, what wasn't so great, what can we improve, just to get sort of like...
Sounds like another business.
It is, but it's actually fantastic to be honest, because when you bring kids to the table, structured way, we bribe them a little bit with chips and sweets.
How old are they?
So now they are 12, 10 and 8.
All right.
So a little bit older now. But they really bring their own topics to the table now because they know this is the place where I can address it. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes you run through this life but you never address really consciously the topics that are there. So this is little thing that we do. Or like calendar planning, constant exchange on what priorities are, annual forecast, what do you plan this year, and annual review, what was good, what was bad, how can we improve on the wheel of life, which is sort of like 8 dimensions of life. Okay. So these things, we're very conscious about that to somehow create an equilibrium where we as a family still stay connected. Yeah. And we don't run and time flies by and you're not consciously knowing what's your concern, what's your expectation. But again, it sounds perfect. There are moments of explosion as well.
But it sounds very interesting that you obviously take parts from your business perspective or business experience.
I think it's helpful.
And can bring it into the family and with your wife probably it doubles, right?
Yeah, I luckily have a wife who's very open for that,
Yeah.
and she also embraces that. But if you, I mean, I think you can also live in different structures. But if you want to if you spend so much time with your businesses, the time that you spend with the family has to be really well invested and well structured and high quality.
Yeah.
And it's and so for that you need structures, I think, and certain rules on which everybody can get together and create the expectations that you need to exchange.
I don't want to make it too psychological here, but how do you kind of not take the risk of being too selfish, that you only think about your company, about yourself, because it's probably the most important thing for you next to your family. Having in mind that your wife is going through the whole to the same thing, but on a different level. So you have to share and have to talk about other stuff as well, right?
Yes. So I was asked, like, what's the biggest challenge for your romantic relationship?
Okay.
And it's actually our kids, not the businesses, But yeah, I know. It's so we have love lunches, for example, my wife and I, right? Because we have to plan in the week, like at Wednesday, 12 o'clock, we meet for a love lunch, for example. Because otherwise, at the week with 3 kids, you never really get the adequate time to do that.
Okay.
We make breakouts on the weekends. But selfishness, I don't think so. It's always a balance. I think you know that as well from your life, I guess, right? It's always a balance between, can I now really invest this extra hour on Friday at 8 o'clock in the business? Or would it be better invested in actually spending more time with the family? And sometimes it's a difficult decision, but I think as we all are conscious about it, it works. Yeah.
Who would have thought we even get love advice here on this stage, huh? Incredible, fantastic. I will open the discussion in a second, but since we're talking about advice, what key points, key advice would you give a new startup entrepreneur? Maybe mistakes to avoid, something that you would have been happy about if you had known them 20 years ago.
So I think the first advice is don't go for, we discussed it yesterday actually, don't follow this myth that you have an exit in 3 years.
Okay.
Right? It's many young startup people say, all right, I do this and then I exit in 3 years and I'm millionaire or something. Yeah? I think experience shows, really, the statistics shows it takes longer, it will go more challenging. Yeah. You start with a value proposition that changes over time. For us as well, we changed with a slightly different value proposition than we had. So start with the expectation of really having this is a long run, right, and not a short run, and be determined and have this North Star fixed purpose, right? That there's something greater than just selling a lot and making money fast.
Is there a risk of getting greedy?
I think it depends on the personality. I personally, for me, money has never been the core driver. It has really more the independence to make certain decisions and also to build something new, create a differentiating edge. But I think the main advice would be
think in the long run.
Think in the long run, have your North Star and purpose, and then you will overcome the challenges. Because there will come a bush, there will come a lake, there will be a wall to climb for sure. It will not be an easy run. And I always say, like, entrepreneurship is like jumping out of a plane with a parachute, right? You're preparing and you're thinking about what could happen, and then you think, I have it under control, and you probably will. But you don't dare to jump 100%. You're afraid to jump. And then when you jump out, you don't think anymore about the fear or so. You actually react to what you've learned, and you take the challenges that come. Yeah. But no, I think long run and get prepared that this is maybe not always the greatest time, but it's something very rewarding when you then have finally achieved a certain level of business. We say always, we for example, we launched the US business like 2 years ago, and my US leader is saying, on one day I drink champagne, on the next day sour milk. Okay. And that's entrepreneurship at the beginning, right? It's always...
And it's a mixture, which is either challenging or...
You just have to come to the state where there's more days of champagne.
Yeah. I mean, mistakes go along the way. That's something that you learn from, I guess. But still, are there any mistakes that you could have avoided if you had been smarter or more savvy, or I don't know?
Sure. In retrospect, you always are smarter, but I think everybody makes mistakes. And then there's another great saying from a captain of the America's Cup boat from New Zealand. He said, So he was asked the same question, do you never make mistakes because they won, right?
Yeah.
And he said, now I also do mistakes, but I recognize them faster and correct them faster than others.
Yeah.
So where's the wind coming over the water, right? Okay, I have to change faster. And so that was a really nice say. So you can make mistakes, but you have to recognize them, correct them fast.
Yeah.
But
there's that one saying from Roger Federer, which really is impressive. That we tend to think that he won a lot of games, but he probably only won about 60 to 70% of the points he made. So it's also dealing with not succeeding or dealing with not making all the points, which can be tricky, but it's a mindset thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Did you have that from the beginning, from the start?
I think as an entrepreneur, you're very well set up if you have this mindset of, okay, shit happened, let's go on. And that's what I called by determination and resilience. Yeah. It's really a core attribute I think you need as an entrepreneur, just to stuck through these difficult times and and you need this North Star. And I think this is something you learn and you get better and better at, but you have to be prepared that there are challenges that are really serious, because sometimes it's then financially highly relevant, but also affecting the work hours that you do.
Yeah. The more you grow, the bigger the challenges become. Yeah. Those can be good things as well, of course. But if you scale the business, you get in touch with other people who are doing the same, maybe on the same level, maybe even higher. How do you deal with that? That the more you grow, the tougher you have to be, or the kind of the more business savvy you have to be?
No, I think I think the bigger you grow, the better you have to get on getting the right people in the boat.
Okay. Yeah.
If you get the right people in the boat, the best people, things are easy actually, much easier. But finding and selecting the right person in your team, I think is the most important task. That the bigger you come is really key. Like my US leader, our chief technology officer, the financial officer, and if you have great people, then they work independently. They make sometimes the decisions for you, where you maybe you don't have to micromanage that. And so selecting the right team and the right people is, I think, the number one task that I have.
That is an interesting point, because you stepped away from the CEO position, right? After a certain time at TRI. Mm-hmm. How did that decision come along, and what were the ideas behind it?
It was more triggered by the fact that I wanted to start a dental clinic group.
Okay.
So to start another venture, I didn't have enough time.
All right.
To that. So, but I think it's also healthy for any business to get some change in leadership.
Yeah. But that can't be easy all the time, right?
Yeah, it can't be easy. No, it wasn't easy. But I'm still, you stay very connected, especially when you're shareholder of the company and board member. I think everybody has to decide for themselves, what the best thing is, and whether you want to stay in your business, whether you want to start another venture. But
isn't it hard for the new CEO?
So first of all, he started, and then I built up the clinic group, which is running, and then I came back as CEO. So I'm actually, so I'm running this actually because I'm so excited about launch in America and growing America, because that's our biggest growth market right now. But I think it comes back to the key point, and then again, for any entrepreneur, you have to do what you love. If you love what you do, it's not work. It's fun and linked to this purpose and North Star. And I really love what I do. Yeah. Working with patients, with dentists in the dental environment, it's really fun for me. And technology. And so if you have that feeling that you're at the right place, you're doing something that you really love, that you're passionate about, why change the course? Okay. Especially when you have 3 kids and a wife at home.
But then we're at the topic of purpose again. These people love to ask questions. Bring it back to you. Do you have any questions, comments? Otherwise, yes, please. And now we put our headphones on.
Yeah.
Here you go.
I think it's still good morning.
Hello.
Can you hear something?
Hello.
Yes. You can't. Let me see. Maybe like this.
Okay. So.
That's a technology guy. Better.
Thank you. Thank you so much for a very informative interview. We learned so much about the entrepreneurship, and also we learned about the purpose because it's mostly difficult when you're a parent to get a balance in between the family and the business.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for an eye-opener. Very interesting that now with a new innovation that patients don't get to wait more than 1 hour to have a dental implant and the tooth. I listen very carefully. What are your visions in growing your market towards Africa? I know it might not be the biggest market, but I think the use of technology is still very slow. And I believe that with this innovation, a lot of us could benefit from what you are doing.
Actually, it's a good point. We have a really big project happening in Egypt right now. Egypt as being one of the biggest market in Africa, where they want to leapfrog. But that's the advantage sometimes of these markets, that you can immediately go from to the digital setup, scanner, printer. And because to print teeth is much cheaper than to mill it with CAD/CAM machines. I don't want to become too technical. So there we have a big setup with a huge dental clinic group to implement these technologies to guarantee that patients can have faster and cheaper provisions. So it's a good point. In many markets of Africa, the infrastructure is not there, unfortunately. But we start with Egypt, South Africa, and some Morocco, these areas. You're right. I mean, but then again, investment for the infrastructure is something that you need. And so for most countries in Africa, as I've seen, the market potential for us then as a company is also not big enough to justify the investment from our side. So we go for the bigger markets like Egypt first,
Sure. One last question and a comment. Who are your competitors? Because I see this innovation, it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we are in the market of dental implants. So here in Switzerland, the world leader is from Basel, Straumann. Then there's a company called Noble Biocare. But as I said before, sure, they are competitors of ours, for sure. But with the innovations that we create, we have created sort of a space in the digital segment where we are really unique. And where with the size that we have, consider this actually a blue ocean to grow in the United States market, because that's the most digital market. But these are established players who have been around for 30, 20 years. And we are the typical example where we have an innovation that is very disruptive to change the workflows and have a chance to really jump in and challenge the status quo. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We just have a question right next to it, right?
Thank you very much for your presentation. And also, your interviewer, he did a fantastic job of making sure that he asked the right questions.
Good.
Like the one of the family has a mother myself with 2 children. So for me, I'm also I'm trying to get my startup off the ground. But because I'm a university lecturer, the startup will belong to the university. That's our terms of agreement. But the university will provide the support which is necessary and the likes of that. Where do I get to a point where I abandon the institution and I take the startup and I run with it, And where were you at the point where you decided that this will work and this is what I'll do, and you gave it your all, your full commitment?
Jump out of the plane with a parachute, you mean, right? Yeah.
Hopefully with a parachute.
Hopefully sometimes without, yeah.
Thank you very much.
So for me, I wasn't at the university. I was actually working for Straumann, the world leader, and I saw how the market works, and I saw an opportunity, and I convinced an investor to invest into the idea that I had and start the business. And so with this investment, I had for myself personally a certain security that you have a wage, you get paid, and so I guess that's the classic thing. You do a business plan, look for an investor, and then get going. I think in Switzerland there are amazing institutions like VentureKick. Actually, someone is sitting next to you who helps in these situations as well. And which I think that's really the ecosystem in Switzerland to help in your scenarios is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. InnoSwiss, VentureKick, that can help you then make these first steps. In my case, it was write a business plan, find an investor, convince him, and get going. And I think our starting capital at that time was 2 million Swiss francs. So That so luckily I found someone, but and then you can make the jump. Yeah, but other people do it bootstrapped, right? And where you start gradually. It depends also on the technology that you want to launch. You know, how capital intensive is it? But in your case, if you're at the university, I would look at these setups like which exist in Switzerland to help actually create spin-off companies. And again, talk to the person next to you. He can give you advice.
And we'll have another discussion here, right, after this one from Oxile, which Fajar is here, CEO, founder, and they come from the university ecosystem as well. So that would be a good question also regarding spin-offs and everything. Very good. Do we have other questions, maybe? Yes, please.
Yes, hello. Well, thank you very much. And my question is concerned about internal organization when it comes to bringing idea or inputs from the client, let's say the client side, back to the kind of back office, because you said you're producing in Switzerland, but you have you basically have institutions in the US and in numerous countries. How do you source those inputs from your doctors, and how do you prioritize them in order to stay kind of agile?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really blessed with an amazing tech team in my company, and we travel a lot. Really, I really believe you have to go. You can't wait here in Switzerland that someone comes and tells you this idea. We travel a lot. Thomas knows it. I spend almost every month in the United States. Our CTO is right now in Vienna at one of the biggest congresses. So we go out there and, like truffle dogs, look for what's actually happening, see what the trends are, what's happening. We talk a lot with the key opinion leaders in the world, see what's happening in the research and at the universities. We really keep an eye on AI at the moment, like what's happening there to accelerate workflows. And I think that's actually a strength of ours, that we are so technology hungry and really look for what's happening out there and wanting to have this, that always being one step ahead of the rest by knowing what's happening. So it's really happening not by the ideas coming to us, it's really us going out, collecting it, and then internally we actually have a very structured process where we have every 3 weeks a tech meeting where we go through all the things that are just now happening, what the latest ideas are, how it corresponds to us, what the threats are, what the opportunities of it are, and then we segment and say, hey, do we make a project out of it? Do we have to amend something? Do we have to maybe just have a plug-in to that software? So that's then a structured process, but it all starts really by really being embedded in the market and having the context to the thought leaders around the world, the universities of the world, and therefore making sure that we always are ahead of the game. Yeah, and then the last thing is, right, you know, our patents that we developed. Some of the things then you have to come up yourself, right? You can gather all the ideas, but to make a differentiating value proposition then is then the innovation part, you know, like where we truly create something different by eliminating something, by changing maybe the configuration, in this case of an implant. But I would say it all is happening once you know what's going on, then you can go this next step. Yeah, so I think it's a very structured process, and we are very active, being always around the world. Yeah.
How about selling and marketing in that regard? Because you were called the Apple of the dental industry, so they sell their stuff very well. They can sell the idea very well. How important is that in your
sales and marketing? Yes, key. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so we have direct sales organizations in the US and in Germany and the UK and other markets, and we want to stay very close to the customers and sharing these innovations through workshops, through congresses, through events is something that is happening on a daily basis. So sales and marketing is, I think, with every industry, right? Yeah. Then the key part, how to sell. There's this wonderful book called, I guess some of you know it, The Tipping Point from Malcolm Gladwell, right? He talks about how to launch great ideas. Yeah. And then you have to first go to these insiders, the nerds. Like it's about an actually jogging shoe example. So they go to the Bronx to share it with the people you really like to wear the latest stuff on that stuff. And then you need the networker, the person who brings it and say, hey, I like the idea, let's bring it to the US. But the true sales success comes from the guy who then says, Urs, do you buy 50 or do you buy 100? And this hard sales aspect is in the end, really still core. Even if you have a great innovation or you have the greatest marketing, sales execution is something where we work a lot, and we can always improve, I guess, yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Yes, there's another one.
Just one last one from my side.
Sure, go ahead.
What would you say is your biggest challenge right now? It can be in any dimension, politically, geopolitically, you name
Tariffs.
it. Tariffs, for example. I didn't want to bring that one up because I think it's kind of maybe every second question is about that. Exactly. But what would you say? How has time changed since you founded your first startup in 2007? Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Until now, how have things changed, and what do you think? How should we move forward on those challenges?
I think one challenge, I don't call it challenge because for me it's exciting, is just really to stay on top of things because of the fast evolution of digital technology. You know, I was listening to Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, who says, you know, the AGI is much closer than many of us think, you know, in terms of general intelligence. And so what does it mean for workplaces? What does it mean for workflows? And so the transformation that's happening in our space can be quite disruptive, and we want to be leaders. And so that's the challenge, but I explained what we do to make sure that we stay. And the second thing which constantly stays for me is like, how can we scale faster and get the financial resources, but also the right people on board? And that's sometimes frustrating because you want to go faster, but you then also have to make sure that sort of your bottom line doesn't break through. And that remains a constant challenge because you constantly want to grow. But again, I don't call it a challenge. I think it's part of scaling fast with the company. So these two things, like how to scale fast in a healthy way, and at the same time staying on top of technology. These are, I would call. And then the last thing, the three children, right? Like,
not to forget that.
Not forget that.
And I think talking about, you know, doing business with the US, we need another hour here, so we won't get into it. Yeah. We have a question here, and then we'll have another one there. Sure.
Thank you very much. I had a question about scaling, as you said, because how do you manage to scale healthily? Because if you only scale from investor money, then at the end you won't have a company and it's not sustainable. But if you only scale from your revenue, then it might be too slow to stay on top of technology.
That's a good question.
So how do you manage that?
It's a very good question. And I think every entrepreneur has to sort of make up their own mind with which speed you go and what you want to achieve. It also depends how capital intensive is what you do. I've taken the decision for myself that investor support helps me achieve goals that I potentially would not achieve. And then we look at the technology advancement, which we were talking about. You know, you also can't afford to grow slow, right? Because there are certain pressures that are coming from competitive spaces where you need to accelerate. But the question is very good, right? Everybody has to answer it individually. And so the key question is, what do you want to achieve with your scaling, right? What's important for you personally, right? Because you can be super happy as well with a mom and pop shop and running that business, super profitable, but you stay in Switzerland, right? We decided to go to the US. The US is super expensive for scaling, right? So last year, like, we really invested like crazy, and you don't see any return on that. But you know, we believe the US is the biggest market. That's the place where you can scale the best product market fit. And so it's, I think, a really good question that has to be answered by everyone individually. But if you want to be a global player, and if you have a cutting edge technology, then I think there's no other choice than getting in smart money, negotiating in a good way for yourself, and scaling. Yeah.
Where's your smart money from? Is it mainly VC, or is it business angels, or how?
It's a mix of family office and venture capital. Venture capital, now private equity. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a follow-up question? Let's pick up the follow-up question and then I'll come.
It's a very short one. When you raise money, do you prefer to raise like from venture capitals, which just bring you a lot of money, or to raise like from people like business angels who have experience and may bring you less money, but bring you also their own experience?
That's the $1 million question.
$1 million question. Right? Again, I think it depends on how strong your own team is. Yeah. So we have a really strong team. I think we really know what we're doing. So for me, I'm not so dependent on maybe having it. I think in general, if you find money with someone who has experience, it's the best scenario. But sometimes you don't have maybe the selection criteria. Now, as we have, for example, in our case right now, we're about actually to make a very exciting addition to our shareholdership that will bring us great leverage globally with sales forces, right? So here, it's also then a question like, which stage of the company are you? What kind of knowledge do you need? At the beginning, you rather maybe need the technology partner or so, or that helps you with the evolution of your technology. We are now in a stage where we need much more a partner who helps us scale with sales forces now to the point of the sales as a key success factor, reaching more key opinion leaders globally. So it's a question of time again, when you need what, and also the strength of your own team, how complete you are, right? We always felt that in terms of technology, we really know what we do. We don't need necessarily another business angel that brings additional know-how in. But if you can get both at the same time, it's always good, I guess.
Yes, please.
So my questions are actually two. One is just out of pure curiosity. What are the challenges you're having with bringing your product to the South African market? Because we're from South Africa, and we think we really need that that technology, for the implants. Because implants in South Africa, I would say they're about maybe like 600 francs just for one implant, and then crowns are a non-starter, So that's the first question. And then my second question was, when you're building your team, I've heard a lot from the other startup CEOs who we've had an opportunity to meet during this week, and everyone says that they hired people and then they found that these people were not a cultural fit. Mm-hmm. What does that mean for someone to be culture fit?
Yeah, a big question, the second one, and a very important one. The first one is easy. I mean, South Africa. So the market is too small for us to create our own sales force. So we look there for distributors. So we select a partner who has already dental experience, make a contract, and then he can resell there. Again, it's a focus topic. Unfortunately, South Africa doesn't have the same potential like the United States for us. So my focus is the US. So the second question is, again, brings me to the point that where Urs and I were discussing about, that HR, selecting the right people is the number one priority to be successful. And so when we do interviews, we do a lot of psychological tests, actually. So to just make sure, like, what's really the person that we're working with, whether it's the disc profile, and you get reports of 30 pages, read about it. Then what I like to do is before I hire someone, I like to take a walk with them on the lake. Because often you have interviews and it's table, and everybody is behaving in a fake way. Yeah? You're not really yourself. But when you take a walk on the lake and then eat at a restaurant, see how they eat, you talk about different stuff. Maybe does he appreciate the lake? Doesn't he appreciate? So you get a little feel for the person that you are. And I don't say it's something everybody should walk on the lake now, but culture fit is absolutely essential. If you don't have that, then it's challenging. And so we take really great care in that. And I'm very blessed that we have an amazing team in our company, and rather make extra interviews to make sure that there's a fit. Yeah. If there's no culture fit, I think it's not going to work. Yeah.
A lot of good advice and a lot of insight. Thank you very much, Tobias.
Thank you, Urs.
Thank you. Danke vielmals. War super.
Danke,
Vielen Dank.
Danke.
Thank you very much.